So here I am in my Megablog folder. This is where I'm going to set up my initial project for the Vue blog. So I'm going to go ahead and say .NET new web. So this is going to be a blank project, and it's always good to start from the beginning to refresh all the stuff that you know, as well as removing all the stuff that you're not using from the project, right? So let me go ahead and call this Vue blog. I'll click on this restore button. It's going to probably run .NET restore for me. I'm then going to actually cd into this as well, in case I will need my command line for in this folder. So one hand on the keyboard, one hand on the command line. If something, I can just go pow, right? So let's go into startup. And as you know, I like to remove all these comments that I don't need in this middle where we won't gonna need it. And let's go ahead and just say use MVC with default route. I rarely use the other option because I generally tend to not set up my own routing, but so I don't need to opt in for that option. I can just use the default one. And also adds MVC to my services. I know I'm going to need a database, so I'm just going to create a constructor where I can surface my configuration. Config, let's not forget to import it, making global. Like so. Okay, and I'm just gonna go ahead and create a variable right here for this connection. Right, just gonna store it in connection. Okay, so that looks alright to me. I'm gonna go ahead and start with creating my model. So I already know I've decided to go towards this database. So let's go ahead and set up this database. Right, I'm gonna create a folder. I'm gonna call it model and rename it to models because there can be multiple. And I'm going to create a new file in here. I'm going to call it post. Let's give it a namespace. That's going to be the default, and not post, but rather models. And here, let's create a public class post. I already know I'm going to be storing in a database, so I'm going to give it an integer of ID. Next thing, I want it to be a really simple blog, so I'm going to give it only a title, and I'm only going to give it a body. So it's going to be a sort of just text only. If you want to add images, I made a lot of videos on that. So go watch those and integrate into yourself. It will be a great learning exercise if you don't know how to do it yet. Okay, so I have my post. That's all right. Let's go ahead and make the DB context now. So I'm just going to call this folder data. And I'm going to say up DBContext. I can call this blog DBContext. You can really name it whatever. But let's go ahead and create a data namespace. I'm going to create a public class app DBContext. I'm going to inherit from DBContext. Let me remove this. Let me import NT Framework Core. I'm going to create a constructor. I'm going to call it up DBContext. And I already know that I'm going to be using an SQL server. I can use it in a memory database, but I will wipe it on every restart. I don't want that. I want a persistent database, so I'm going to go ahead and say DBContext options, and I already know from documentation that I need to specify my own DBContext, so the class that it's inheriting from DBContext, right? And I need to pass it to the base in order for it to work properly. Okay, this is mostly it that will be required from me. As well, I'm going to be creating a DB set. So actually, let's start with a prop. This is DB set and of type post. So I will need to import this, and the table is going to be called posts. So let's import post. Now, giving a minute of thought, I know I will be needing users and an admin panel to be able to sort of so only I can create these posts, all right? So let's go ahead and say identity DB context and import using a Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity, and this should be all right. So at this point, we can go back into our startup and we can set up this database. So let's go ahead and say services, add DB context. And the type of our DB context is this. Let's go ahead and specify some options. And let me close this off. And some of the options I want is use SQL Server. I know I will need to import NT framework core for this, and I will need to pass in my connection here. So I will need my connection string, so let's go actually into app settings.json and let's type out this connection. So the first thing is we need our server, so I'm going to copy paste the machine name in a second. Next thing we will need a database, so I'm just going to call it megablog. And next thing I want trusted underscore connection equals true, and this is just so my Windows authentication is used to go into the database, so I can actually log in. And here's my machine name, so that's sorted. Okay, I'm happy with that connection. Next thing, let's go ahead and set up identity. So add identity, and I'm gonna need to specify types, identity user. The reason I'm specifying types and I'm not using a default identity is because default identity comes with all the MVC, basically the Razor library that contains all the pages and stuff. I don't want that. And then I want identity role, just like so. And then I want to specify some options. If you know me, I like my passwords to be passwords, so I'm going to go ahead and specify some options so I can achieve that. So passwords, and then let's say required digit equals false. Let's go to require non-alphanumeric false. Then we need require uppercase false. And then require length is 6 characters. Okay, and then we want to basically add entity framework stores, right? So we need to basically say which database we're storing it with. So app DBContext, donezo. And now I know I will need to use authentication, so I'm just going to tell it use authentication, right? So that's that, looking good. I'm going to go ahead into my terminal now, and what I'm going to do is, I know that I've just set up my database and everything. I actually need to create this database, so I will need to create some migrations. So let's go into .NET EF migrations, add init. So the init, well, it stands for initialization for me. So my first migration is usually init, and then during development, I will keep creating migrations, and then before publishing, I will go ahead, delete all the migrations, delete the database, and create the initial migration as well. Sorry, again. So then I have this sort of initial production migration. All right, so then let's go ahead and call database update. Okay, so everything looks good to me. On here, the database is created. So if I launch the app right now, I'm not going to be able to write or see anything from the database, right? I don't have any views or controllers. So that's the next thing that I will need, okay? So let's go ahead and start with the controllers. I'm going to create a controllers folder, move it into my project folder, like so, and let's go ahead and create a new controller, and we're going to call it a blog controller. So let's create a namespace, view blog controllers, public class blog controller, inherit from controller. Whoa, that didn't want to happen. My mouse betrayed me. Okay, so this is now a class, that's a controller. What I will do from the start is that I know I'm going to be using a JavaScript application, so I'm not going to be rendering stuff from my controller, essentially. I will be fetching data from my application. So what I will actually specify that this is an API controller, and that I want the route to start with the controller name. So because the SPA can have its own routing, I want to be explicit in stating what routing I want for my controllers to have. So let's go ahead and create a constructor where I will bring in my app DBContext, right? App DBContext. Let's call it CTX. I will import this and let's make it global. So, and now I want two methods for displaying a list and for retrieving a specific blog. So let's go ahead and say public not action results, sorry, I'll start with a enumerable. And I'm going to specify a post here. I'm going to say get post, so this is going to be returning multiple posts. And for this, I will need to go into my context posts and just call toList. So I will need to import link, I will need to import my post and the collection generics. Let me move my mouse actually. So, and as an API convention, this is just going to be at the default root. So I think, yeah, I'll say HTTP get, just like that. Next thing I want to say public post. So I'm getting a single post, get post. I'll need an ID for this, and I will say CTX posts first, and I will say ID equals ID. So I'm gonna get the first post that matches this. Next thing I want is my HTTP get attribute, and I will say that this route will need an ID. So the routing convention is /blog/ and I will get all posts, or /blog/ID, and I will get post. Okay, so I'm happy with this. Next thing I will need is an admin panel where I will be creating a blog and perhaps maybe seeing a list of blogs if I am humble that way. So let's create a blog admin controller. Let's go ahead and create our namespace, view blog controllers. Now let's create a public class blog. Actually, I'm being stupid. Let me copy paste everything here. There we go. This is not going to be an API controller. The routing convention is going to be /action after the controller name. I will rename this to blog admin controller. I will grab this name and rename the constructor as well, and I will delete these two actions. Now, the reason this is not going to be an API controller is because I want my admin panel to be reusable between the two applications for Vue and Angular. And the rule, after we are finished with this application and before we go into the Angular application, I will show you how to extract this functionality and reuse it. So let's go ahead and create a public action result, and all this is going to be is just an index, and I want to return a view where I will display my my posts. So just toList, same thing. Let's copy this and let's specify that this is a HTTP get, and this is a post, HTTP post. Okay, and the only two things I need to create my post is a string title and a string body, like so. And since this is going to be a creational call, I will need to make this a task since I want to be calling await async. Let's turn this into a method body. Let's go ahead and say CTX, not add, sorry, CTX posts, add. Let's create a new post. And in here I want to say that the title is title and that the body is body. Just like that. Let's close this off and let's go ahead and await CTX save changes async. Okay, and instead of returning view, I'm actually going to return to action, and the action that I'm going to be returning to is index, and this is going to be on the blog admin controller. Let's go ahead and close this off. All right, looks good to me. I will need a razor page for this, and before that, let me actually just put a space here, and I will remove this comment as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a views folder. All right, so views, and in this views folder, I'm gonna go ahead and create a blog admin folder. And in this blog admin folder, I'll create an index.cshtml page. Okay. Now I'm going to be using at model view blog.models. post, and this is going to be an IE enumerable. Okay. And all I want to do is basically for each post, I want to display my post first, right? So in model, let's just say paragraph and at p title. So I just want to display my titles, and they're going to come after the form. So then I want a div, and I want my form in here. And since the method is exactly the same, I'm just going to specify that the method is post. Next, let's go ahead and make an input. Let's copy this input since there are going to be two. And let's actually put another one because we can say that the value, sorry, not validate, value of this is submit with a big S, and type will be submit as well. Okay, so for both of these, I will say that the name is, first one will be title, and the second one will be body. Okay, so title, body, and this should take care of creating this. So let's go ahead and give this a go. Let's fire this up. Not watch run, I will actually just run it. Okay, so it has broke. So it says here failed to build address blah blah blah. This address is already in use, so I'll have to go into my program and I'll have to say use URLs and http://localhost. I'll just say 5050, and this should do for me. So .NET run. Okay, looks good to me. Let's go ahead, open this up. Okay, so as expected, it can't find this first page, so this is a 404. What we do want is the blog admin index page. Okay, and here we go. Let me actually add a little label because I care about my sanity and knowing which input field is which. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a first test blog. So this will be the first test blog. We're going to submit it, and there we have our first test blog. Now, if we go ahead and go to /blog, we are going to get a list of blogs. So you can see this first square bracket, that means it's an array. And if we specify the ID, which is this one, we will get this ID. We will get this, sorry, blog on its own. Okay, so now that I'm happy that the admin controller is working, I'm going to go ahead and clear my console. And what I will do is actually put an authorized tag on it, right? So only a logged in user can access it. So not authorized, but authorized. Let's import this and let's delete this import. So the general idea is this: I'm only gonna have one admin account, and I want only the admin to sign in. So I only want a login screen. Okay, so let's go into my controller, and I want a new controller, and I will call it account controller.cs. Again, I'll copy everything from my blog controller and I'll paste it into here. Again, I'll specify the same routing as for my blog controller, and I'll rename this to account controller, rename my constructor as well. And instead of this, I will need two actions. So public action result, this will need to be index page. So I'm just going to return the view. Actually, not index page, I'll have a login page. And I'll copy this, and again I'll specify the same thing I did for the admin controller. This will be a get, and whoop, this one will be a post, so HTTP post, and what I'm going to be posting is string username and string password. Okay, and let's go ahead and say, right, this will need to be a sync task. Since I already know I'm going to be using a sign-in manager, so let's go ahead and bring in our sign-in manager, and this is going to be of type identity user, and this is going to be user, not user, sign-in manager. And let's go ahead and make this global. Okay. So I want to grab this sign-in manager and I want to throw it up in the air. I'm joking. I actually want to go call password sign-in as async, and all this is going to use is my username that I'm going to pass and the password. And then I'm just going to specify false for persistent login and the lockout. So let's call await. I will store this result and I will do the bare minimum with it, as I'm going to say, well, if result is successful, then what we want to do is return to action, and we want to go to the index page of the blog admin page. All right. Otherwise, I just want to return back to the account controller and the login page. Okay. So let's go ahead and copy this index page. Oh, let's create a new folder. We'll call it account. And in here, let's create the, let's not create the login. I'm just going to paste the index page and I'm going to create it, rename it to login. Next thing, I'm just going to specify that this is the username. This is the password. And I'm going to say that this is password as well, type password, because I care about security. So username, this is password. I won't need this, and I'm not going to need the model. And this is going to be okay. I don't need to authorize this. I will delete these import statements. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this. I'm going to do .NET run again. Okay, so I specified actions. It's rather action. So let's give this a refresh. It's not going to rebuild because it's .NET run. Okay, so I'm just going to run it again. Okay, so let's give this a refresh. Nice. Let's go to blog admin index, and with any luck, it's going to redirect us to the login page, and it did. So we don't have an admin account. Silly me. How am I going to log in without an account? Right, so let's go to program, and this is where I like to do my seeding. So let's separate the builder from the running, and when we build the context for our application, which is here, in between this stage, we want to do the building. Okay, so I'm gonna import I'm gonna get a using statement, and I'm gonna say create this scope, and we want to dispose of this scope after we are done with it. So I want to go to services and get scope, and it's not get scope, it's actually create scope. Yep, dependency injection, import that, and now let's do so we have scope, we create scope. So this is essentially creates our dependency injection container and allows us to extract some stuff from there. So what do we have in our dependency injection? Everything that we put into our services right here. So I want to grab my DBContext, okay? So let's go ahead and create a variable ctx, and I'm going to go into scope. I'm going to go into service provider, and I'm going to get required service. And this is going to be of app.dbContext. Let's get this one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my context, and I'm going to say users, if there are any, do nothing, right? But I'm going to say if there aren't any, that's when we actually want to seed. So when there are any users, we want to create a user, and to create a user, we're going to need a user manager. So again, I'm just going to go into my scope, service provider, get required service, and this is going to be, let me drop this to a new line, a user manager, and the type is identity user. Let's import identity and close this method off. Okay, so we have our user manager. Next thing, we need an actual user, and let's call him an admin. So this is going to be identity user, and I forgot to say new. So a new identity user, and the username is just going to be admin. I don't need to specify anything else. I will go into my user manager then, and I'm just going to create a sync, okay? So all I need to do is pass in my admin, and I need to specify the password, which you probably already know if you watch my videos. And since this is an asynchronous method and this is not an asynchronous function, I will need to get the awaiter and call get result on it, and this will actually execute this task. And after this is done, the scope will be disposed of, so memory will be freed up and the host will run. So let's go ahead and call dotnet run again. So you've seen this query right here that happened. That's my user being created. So let's go ahead onto our blog admin. Okay, now we can use admin, password, and login. And here we are on our admin page, and let's do test2, and this is the second test blog. Okay, and again, if we go to /blog, here we have both of our blogs, and if we grab the second one, it just grabs the second one. Okay, so there you have it. This is the minimalistic setup for a blog. Next episode, we're going to be adding the Vue client. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, you know to leave them in the comments. If you'd like me to cover any additional functionality, guys, also leave it in the comments. If you have anything good to say, leave it in the comments. If you have anything bad to say, then also leave it in the comments, because I want my videos to get better. And as always, thanks for watching, and see you in my other episodes.